folks, Professor K here. So now that we've learned more about how to frame our subject using composition and cropping, I want to get into some of the fun stuff with Photoshop. We're going to introduce selection tools this week. We're not going to be able to do much with them just yet, but next week we'll begin to get into some more advanced techniques with selection and compositing. However, knowing how to select something in Photoshop and how to deselect it is an important base for that and will help you in that more advanced compositing process. Let's get started. All right, so where we left off last time was I have my model here, she's stomping through and she's like really got this like forward motion, almost like Godzilla, right? So I was coming up and thinking like, oh, what fun things could I do with this photo? And I was like, you know what? Why don't I have her stomping through New York City? That would be a really fun way to teach some of our selection tools. So what I've done is I've downloaded a little photo from Unsplash of New York City here. And I'm just going to place it again by dragging and dropping into Photoshop. And then I'm going to just not holding shift. Here's my hand. I'm not holding shift, but it's keeping it proportional. Remember that Photoshop doesn't want you to hold shift to keep things proportional, unlike other Adobe programs. I'm just going to place this here kind of where I want it. And my goal is to get our Godzilla friend here, our Godzilla model, on top of New York City. So what we need to do here? Well, first of all, New York City is on top of the model. So the first thing we need to do is we need to change the order of these layers. Why is the city on top of the model? Well, because it's on top in the layers. So let's try that. Let's click, drag, and oh, we would normally drop here, but why is it not happening? Why is it not working? Normally this would work. This is a special thing about Photoshop that's different from Illustrator. Notice the background here. Background has a lock symbol by it, and it's a special type of layer in Photoshop. By default, you won't be able to do much with this layer, including remove parts of it, reorder it, or quite frankly, do anything except paint on top of it, unless you change it from background or unlock the background. So let's try this. Let's see if we can unlock it. Does that work? It does. And what that's done is it's renamed this to layer 0. Now, another way that you can do this, which is the way I normally do, is just rename this by double clicking it, hitting layer 0 and hitting OK. And that will achieve the same effect. Either way is just fine. By the way, if you ever want to lock a layer again, for example, if we never want this city to move again, which I don't think we do because it's going to be in the background, you can hit the lock button and that will keep it there. And now notice when we click on it, well, it doesn't look like anything's moving. Check out this thumbnail. Something's moving. It is actually the layer underneath. So let's put that back. And now let's reorder our layers in Photoshop by clicking and dragging above. And now we've achieved part of our goal here, getting the woman on top of the city. So next, we want to think about selection. And how do we know we want the selection tools? Because we want to get rid of this pink background. We want to select this pink and purple background in order to show the city underneath. So what are our options for that? To the left here, we have a number of selection tools. Underneath this little move tool here, this first group of tools, these first 3 are all about selecting things. In the first group, the rectangular marquee tool, elliptical, single row, and single column marquees, those are all going to select based on a particular shape. So for example, here's the rectangular marquee tool. And what we could do is we could select just like this. And notice that we have the marching ants. This is what I like to call these the marching ants. That's how I was taught. Whenever you have the marching ants going in Photoshop, that's how you know you're in a selection mode. And this is great. You can move the selection around using this white arrow and little box tool down underneath. But it doesn't really select around the legs very well. So I don't think this is really the tool for us. We are going to deselect this using Command D, and that will deselect. Now you can also get to this through the menu under Select and Deselect if you prefer, but I always like the keyboard shortcuts because they're faster. Similarly, if you use the elliptical marquee tool, that's really not going to help you either. It's great for like if you need a circular shape, but we have very organic shapes here they're going to be a lot harder to select using any of those tools. Realistically, I don't really ever use that top set of tools. For the most part, you can probably ignore them. There are better ways to create a nice sharp square or a nice sharp circle in Photoshop that we'll explore later. This next set is actually a little bit more useful. These are lasso tools. Lasso tools are good at irregular or organic shapes. And they're also good at like kind of pointy, like odd shapes. The difference between each of these is how they do the selection. So with a lasso tool, you are in complete control of the selection. You're going to draw it out just like this. And, you know, I'm good at this, so you can see that I'm able to draw up to her arm pretty closely. However, you don't get any of the assistance from Photoshop to select things and really get the exact edges. It turns out that Photoshop's actually a little smarter and finer tuned to this selection than my hand is, right? So the lasso tool is, again, one that I don't really use. We're going to hit deselect and not worry about it. However, Polygonal Lasso and Magnetic Lasso tool do have some use, especially when Photoshop has a hard time determining what the edge of something is. And that does happen. So the Polygonal Lasso tool is really good at creating very sharp edges, kind of like the pen tool, except you don't have the curve to it, right? So why would you want to use this over, say, Photoshop's content-aware selection tool? Why might you want that? Well, here you can see that it's not going to work very well with a body because a body's got a lot more curves and it's a lot more natural feeling. However, let's take this out and let's take a look at our buildings here. And let's see if we can use some content-aware selection using the Magic Wand tool, or even quick selection or object selection. Let's see how these do on this city one. We're going to try object selection, and our goal is going to be to select this city skyline and just see how it does. So I'm just going to go over here and go around. Oh, well, that didn't help. Look what it selected. It selected this, it looks like it tried to select the lamp pole and the street pole. So where might object selection be good? Maybe it'll work a little better over here. Yeah, look at that. We've got a pretty quick selection of our model here. But look at this, even this isn't perfect. Because of her tattoos, Photoshop is detecting the edge of her tattoo as the edge of her arm. So you can't always rely on this. Whenever there's a complicated pattern or something, you may get a strange selection. You can see here that it missed her eyelashes. While Photoshop can help you with the initial selection of something, especially with the content-aware stuff, you'll often need to go back in and fine-tune that content-aware selection, either by using Enhance Edge or Object Subtract, or using selecting and masking, which, again, can be really helpful. I didn't even realize you could mask directly in the same thing. Let's hit OK and see what kind of mask this makes. Either way, it's not always going to get things exactly as you say. So how would we select our city? How would we do a better job with this? Well, let's try quick selection tool just to see if that does any better. Not quite. The way quick selection tool works is that there's a tolerance it has between different colors. So what you can see here is because there's a lot of blue in both the buildings and in the sky, it's trying to grab everything. So although we have content-aware selection and it works really well for removing studio backgrounds or something like that, it is still really helpful to know the more traditional tools for times like these when selecting is just not as straightforward as that and you've got more natural light going on in the photo. And that's where our polygonal lasso is going to come in. Let's take a look at how that works with our buildings here. Here we can see up at the top, let's just start at the very far corner. You can see that once I click, I've got this kind of straight line going on. Hold Shift to keep it completely straight. And what I can do is I can just kind of go up to the edges of buildings and quickly, even perhaps more quickly than the content-aware selection tool would be able to do for me if I was trying to clean things up, just really quickly go through and mask this right out. And now you can see maybe there is some really nice benefit to having the Polygonal Lasso tool. Even when we have these new content-aware tools that can make it easier to select things. So let's just notice this, kind of go along the edges. It really doesn't take too long. Going up here, you get pretty quick at it. Back up here, oh, this one's going to be a tough one. I'm actually going to go around that and cut it off because I want to use a different type of selection to add to that. Up here, grab this little edge of the building here, way back up here. And this would just mask the sky out, right? So we can even go down here, over here, right to the bottom. And then to finish the selection, you're going to go and notice how when I come close to the edge up here, I get this little circle around my cursor. That will finish the selection. Click once. And now you can see the marching ants all around will finish the selection. In fact, let's see how this works by creating a copy of this selection on a new layer. The shortcut for this is Command J. Oops, and let me make sure this is unlocked so we don't have that problem. Command J. All right, there we go. And now we have a new layer via copy. So let's turn off that bottom layer and look at these little grid spaces here. That's how you know it's transparent. So we can even double check and see how close we got by creating a new layer. That's this new little plus at the bottom of layers. Let's choose a nice color that we can see really easily. Let's choose a big red. Use Option Backspace to fill and see just how well we got the selection. Pretty good, right? This actually looks like a pretty, especially like over here, really nice clean lines, really great selection of the city. So we could easily change the background of the sky using that. Let's get back to our original point though. Let's get back to selecting our model, because ultimately that's what we want to take the background out of here. Let's try now the Magnetic Lasso tool. The Magnetic Lasso tool tries to stick to the edges of whatever is closest to your cursor. So this is easier demonstrated than anything. I'm going to click and I'm just going to start a selection. And I'm just dragging my mouse along and see how Photoshop is like trying to detect the edges as I go. If I pull way out here, it will get some other stuff. But generally it does a pretty good job, even down to our, well, it can't capture our eyelashes. It's having a lot of trouble with that. Hair is like notoriously hard to mask out in Photoshop, and we'll learn more about how to deal with that technique. But as you can see, you can kind of go through and do a nice selection like that. That said, it'd probably take a while. Your best bet is to use the content-aware selection tools to speed up your selection process and then add to those or subtract from those selections and refine them. So let's try that. We are in the fourth tool down, selecting the object selection tool by pressing and holding on the tool. Go ahead and drag a box right over the subject. And let's even see if we can do it this way here. Oh, you know what? Can you see why this isn't working? I was like, huh, why isn't that working as it's expected? Look at this, we're on layer 2. It's trying to select all of this red layer. No wonder it's not doing anything. I'm gonna click on layer 0 so that I get some actual selections on this photo. What layer you're on defines how Photoshop will handle the selection. So let's try that again. All right, so did a great job down here, got the boots, got a pretty good approximation of the hair, but we just need to get these last couple arm pieces. Let's try refining this by going back up in here. And let's start by using the quick selection tool. And the quick selection tool, it's a little hard to see. I'm going to put my cursor over to the left here so you can see. Notice how it looks like a brush. Brushes in Photoshop, you can decrease and increase using the left and right square brackets. Really easy way to do that. You can also do it up here, but I find it much more natural just to use the keyboard. Now, to add to a selection, you're going to hold Shift, and that is going to add. To subtract from a selection, you're going to hit Option, and that is going to decrease. Now, it used to be a little easier to see what was going on here. Here's plus, here's minus. Oh, I really wish that you could see this changed in the UI. It used to be a bigger cursor in the middle. So I'm going to hold Shift. And if you probably squint really hard, you can see it. Now I'm going to hold minus. Watch the middle of that cursor really closely. See how it barely changed? That's a minus. So not as useful as it used to be, but that's okay. All you need to do is Shift is add, Option is minus, and check this out. It's even like grabbing things properly. We're just going to add this a little bit here. And as you click and kind of add a little bit more, oops, let's undo that, Command Z. It's actually learning where the edges are and adjusting the rest of this to kind of reflect that. And you can click and drag even just like a brush. Let's Option click and let's try removing that this way. So it's a little bit finicky. If you're having trouble with that, try using one of the lasso tools the same way. Try going in with the Magnetic Lasso tool, zoom right in, and just refine the selection by, let's say we want to get rid of this a little bit, holding Option, starting a selection, and just going right on it, and then selecting it out. Easy, right? The better you get at selecting in Photoshop, the easier it will be to get really nice composites. So I'm just going to kind of go around in here. Oh, that looks so much nicer. These lasso tools are like really excellent for just refining your selection. And I didn't do a great job with that one. So I'm just going to go back and minus through here. It's going to be tough to get it perfect, but eventually you'll have a really nice selection. Now, before you go all in on the selection method and this masking method, I do have a technique I'll show you next week that will make this easier. But for this week, let's just stick to the basics. Selection's already kind of a lot to learn. Let's say that we've decided, oh, let's get her arm here. Up and around. You can even zoom out and get a pretty good approximation of this. It's the beauty of these lasso tools. Don't let the computer do all the work for you. It's just not that smart sometimes. You gotta come back in and help it out. There we go. Much, much better. This is a good rough approximation of what's happening with our model. At this point, you can do a couple of things. You can hit delete and that will get rid of her. It's not what we want though. Command Z to undo that. If we wanted to select everything around her, we would select the inverse of this selection. So you can do that by going to select and inverse, and it won't look like it changes much, but hit delete, and that will get rid of the background. Let's undo that, and I'm going to demonstrate the keyboard shortcut. Shift Command I. That will do the same thing. And again, hitting delete will get rid of the background. However, I want to introduce the next set of tools and the next set of compositing methods we'll use by showing you one more thing that you're not going to get quite yet, but we're going to learn about more soon. Instead of hitting delete or using erasers in your photos, try using what's called a layer mask. That's going to be this little nugget at the bottom here, this one that kind of looks like a camera. Click that once, and oops, I had the wrong thing selected. Make sure you have your model selected and then hit that once, and you'll see that it does the same thing. We'll examine more why this happens in a future class. But if you're just getting a rough selection out, do it this way, because what I'm going to show you soon is that this layer mask allows you to change and refine that masking anytime you want. So let's say that I wanted some of that photo back. I could paint onto this layer mask, either using black or white to get that back. So let's just give her a little bit of her background back here. I'm going to really open up my brush here and look at this. We can paint the background right back in if we want. Similarly, by hitting X and switching the colors from white to black, we can paint it back out. And that is where selecting and compositing gets so much easier. So don't get in the habit of using eraser, using clear. Start by, even if you don't know how to refine it yet, using a layer mask right down here. I promise you'll get the hang of it soon, but use that along with selecting to start out in your projects. It will help you so much, especially down the line. So I hope that shows you just some of the basics you'll need to get started on your advertisement. I'm really excited to see how many composites you put together and how you figure out how to get photos to work with each other like this. So can't wait to see what you come up with. And we are going to learn so much more about masking and compositing soon. I'll see you later.